Okay,
There we go.
James Hall, welcome to Mostly Training. Thanks for being here and for making the time. Someone that I want to talk to because we're in this very niche community of bigger blokes trying to go fast on these specific machines whilst lifting heavy weights and trying to figure out how to get better at it. And
Yeah.
just for those that don't know, I just want to highlight some of your achievements. You are the current holder of the 2,000-meter SkiErg world record at 5:40.
So no, it's only 5:57.
5:57.
Yeah,
Why did I have that in my head?
I had no idea. Yeah, I'm the one of only two people to go sub 6.
So there's only it's that small a group. It's you and Justin,
Jason.
Jason Marshall.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And then I think the next best is probably someone like Phil at like a 6:03 or something.
Just
Yeah.
over it. And until recently, you were the owner of the 1,000-meter world record on the RowErg, the erg, which you took from yours truly. And you've had some other notable performances. What are those that bring you some pride?
I, I'd say the next one or up there with the top three is the 1,000 meter skier.
Yeah, which
Uh,
is
it's a 2:40.6 or
that's
7.
must have where I got muddled up and just
Yeah.
and for reference, it does indicate where the SkiErg has potential to go because if we're looking at world record on the rower now
Yeah.
238, ski 240, RowErg to 535, and so you're thinking it has a lot of potential here to get better, especially as these
Yeah.
aren't abstract performances. These are performances that you've done on both apparatus.
Yeah, so the when I set out to do the the SkiErg world record, um I'd already done a 5:57 on the 2K.
Yeah.
And then I went and did the 1K, and I actually looked at your RowErg record and thought, wow, that would be an achievement if a SkiErger could beat a RowErg. So that was my goal, was a 2:39.
Yeah.
And I came close, I was within a second or 1.1 away from it. And then I think, again, while we were speaking earlier, it was just on the day.
Yeah.
Probably just didn't get it just right. And the last sort of 100 meters, which is, the most important 100 meters, arguably, in the race, just fell away from me. And I just went so lactic and heavy. Yeah, just that ability to go under 240 slipped away. But yeah, almost did it. And that gave me a kind of really good sense of achievement. And I believe from what's out there about sounding big-headed is I don't think that will be beaten anytime soon. I'm not saying it will
Yeah.
never be beaten,
Yeah.
but from what's currently out there, from who's presenting on social media or things like that, there's no one even in like the 2:46s,
Yeah.
47s.
I haven't seen anyone even close to that ballpark. And if I've got this right, you and I are the only two people who have held both those records at the same time.
Yeah, I would say I think that's true.
Because yeah, until recently you had both, and prior to that, um,
You had both, yeah.
yeah, and I'd say mine were softer versions. So when I did the ski, that was at 254, which was low hanging fruit at the time.
Mhm.
To be fair, I trained for it for 6 weeks and really only to have like a low stakes approach to figuring out how I might train for the 1K on the road because it's like same energy systems. They can use all
Yeah,
of the same intervals. And now when I reflect on it, like I had no idea what I was doing technically. And it's such a new machine relatively that no one does. And now when I speak with people about how to approach the SkiErg technically, I always use you as the reference point. And not only
that's great.
I go look at what James Hall is doing, but when you talk about it, in terms of your approach and a relatively short stroke cycle, when you come in from a rowing background, it's hard to adapt that approach. But I think you really cracked the nut there. So credit to you on that.
I mean, to get into the nitty-gritty of that is you only have to look at the force curve. Um, I don't know if you could bring it up retrospectively, but obviously, as you're well aware, the force curve is gradually on to a soft peak
Yeah.
and then it tails off for the row. But for the SkiErg, it violently jumps from nothing, it violently jumps up and then it tails off extremely fast. So you don't need to gather speed from the top. And because it only hits a peak for a very small moment in time, you'll hear the fan accelerate. And then as soon as you're past that kind of leverage point, as soon as you go beyond that, it will just very quickly, it's like a up, down,
Yeah.
like a inverted V
Yeah.
almost.
Yeah.
Whereas the RowErg's an inverted U.
Yeah.
So that's what gives me weight behind my technique is you just want to hit that peak more often. And because you don't have to gather momentum like you do in the rower where you push your legs and then you get your hips into it, you're already straight away, your hips can go into it.
Do you
Uh,
remember when you first figured that out?
um, I'm under I mean, biomechanics and all that, obviously, you could study it to the death. I'm a big fan of letting your body figure out what's useful and what's
Mhm.
not useful. So I just kind of did a combination of the two. I just went ahead and started. And then over the course of about 4 or 5 years, I think my body just refined and dropped unuseful parts of the stroke. So it stopped reaching up too high and it stopped using my elbows. It stopped reaching too low.
Yeah.
And then I'd compare with the cross country ski. I didn't initially, I'd compare with the cross country ski and see the similarities there. And then I've just came up with this kind of conclusion. So if you watch the marathon world record, it's something ridiculous like a 147.
Yeah.
Um, the guy's stroking about 47 to 48 per
Yeah.
minute, and
Yeah.
he's just hitting literally about 12 inches of actual resistance from when he catches to when he flips it through. He's only catching about 12 inches of fan there.
Yeah.
Whereas, well, as I've just started to learn a bit more about the RowErg, you need to catch anywhere from 1.3 to 1.6 of distance.
Yeah. The leverage is helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's right. It's a completely different movement. It's almost non-comparable.
Yeah.
Uh,
The only thing that's comparable is that
it's
it
a
appears so similar. It's the same
yeah.
fan oriented
It's
differently, but
yeah.
that makes all the difference.
Yeah. It's basically a rower just been configured into a
Yeah.
skier. It's
Yeah. Yeah.
the physics are the same in terms of force, which is mass times acceleration, and then hitting it at a certain stroke rate. So I think you just make up for what you lack in the length of the stroke rate of the stroke drive. You just make up for in stroke rate
And
for
do
the
you feel like with the shorter stroke cycle on the SkiErg that there's a trade-off on power, on peak power? Because it's definitely going to improve efficiency because you don't have all this wasted.
yeah
And just to frame this for anyone that's listening or watching that's not in the weeds on this, with the rower, there's a real benefit to getting from the catch to finish, all else being equal. If you can manage yourself, a longer stroke is better to a point. But with the ski, what we're saying and what you've determined is that instead of taking it to its complete length, which is
Mhm.
you basically got a fully closed hip position,
yeah
you're using the elbows a lot, you're extending the hands, and your feet are down near your
yeah
ankles. You're saying hit it at the top, don't extend too far, hit it in this strong range,
yeah
and then pull it more towards the hips, and then
yeah
get on float up to the next stroke.
yeah and it becomes very you get into what's called flow. So obviously what you're more efficient in flow. Being in a rhythm, your body can always second guess where it's going to be next. Whereas when it's a bit chaotic, um, you can't really find that rhythm.
Yeah.
So just getting in a nice flow, and I guess as you're probably better educated on things like this for me, but the local sort of contraction, local mitochondria just gets very used to being in that range, and you don't need to be on the resistance for too long, because the longer you're on the resistance, the more chance of fatigue.
Yeah. Yeah. And
So
yeah, well, longer resistance, you've also got to cover that range more on the
on
way
the
up,
back, yeah,
which is why when you started doing the things that you were doing, I was like, yeah, I mean, he's a big bopper, but I was still like, what the fuck? That was was and am very impressed. And just to clarify for myself and the listener, on some stats, height and weight, you and I know is a range. So height doesn't change as much, but height and weight would be in. I mean, you're in Australia now, so we can use centimeters and kilograms. No pounds and stone if possible.
yeah. What's the question? Sorry.
Oh yeah, what's your weight range and what's your height? So because it's easy for people to assume that it is one thing or another, and I always like to hear it from the horse's mouth, so it's like on the record is,
What weigh
yeah,
and
yeah, well, like this is how tall I am, and this is my, like I said, it's a weight range for you and
yeah.
I. It's never just,
Well, I'm set at 6 foot. I
yeah,
can guarantee that.
yeah, yeah. It's not going anywhere.
My wife always tells me I'm 5'11", but I'm actually 183 on the dot.
Yeah, so you'll
I'm
take it.
I'm 6 foot.
Yeah,
Um, and I go through phases. I put on weight so easily. When I'm fit, so when I played professional rugby from the age of 21 to 31 and 2 or 3 years either side of that semi-professionally, I would be at my absolute fittest and moving well and happy and getting to rucks and mauls at 118.
yeah.
That is my true fighting weight. When I played at like 124, if I'd had an injury or a bit of a lull and didn't play much and put a bit of weight on, um, I would get to 124 and I would just feel terrible. I would be
Which is
slow.
not that much heavier. Like it's
6 kilos,
six
yeah.
kilos on a 120 kilo bloke, though, is not.
No, but I would feel loads different. Like just my ability to breathe, getting up from a ruck, going to the next ruck, getting from scrum to scrum, chasing the ball. I felt every kilo above 118.
Yeah.
So I always endeavored to be at 118. And when I'm, post rugby and into my endeavors that I enjoy now, which is mostly erging, yeah, if I'm around 118, 119, I'm happy. I can train. I can breathe well, sleep well, and I can go up to around 130 when I kind of take my foot off the gas, maybe drink too much.
Yeah.
And I definitely feel 130. So
Yeah. So
I've got
18 is sort of the bottom, like the bottom 118 is kind of still
yeah,
fighting weight. If
yeah,
you didn't train and you ate, I wouldn't say not like an animal, but kind of normally, what do you think your body
intuitively.
would, and this is kind of a,
I think I would grow. My leanness would reduce greatly, and I
yeah,
would put weight on.
yeah. To
Yeah.
what? To what? Just like gradually, you know,
Yeah.
use, yeah,
I'd probably go to about one. I think the heaviest I've ever been is 135.
yeah, yeah. Okay.
But
And what were you when you finished school?
um, I think I got to by the time I was 18, I was already about 118 kilos.
Yeah.
I've
Okay.
kind of I was bigger
Yeah.
out of school. I was me and I suppose we best touch on my little brother at some point.
Yeah. Yeah. So just for those that aren't aware, your brother is Eddie Hall,
Yeah.
first person to deadlift 500 kilograms, world's strongest man winner, many accolades, another world record holder. You have another brother as well?
Yeah. My older brother is yeah, he's a little bit shorter, probably a little bit heavier than me.
Yeah.
He's a bit more of an academic kind of guy, but he had a good sporting background. He played rugby regionally, and he then went to uni in road on the water.
Okay.
He then got into triathlons. So he
Okay.
actually has still got a British record for 100K.
Is that right?
on the erg. Yeah.
Okay, so there is something. I mean, you're all big bodies, so because we're
Mm.
speaking about weight, and when someone hears, oh, 118 at school, like that is pretty abnormal, even for a front rower at school. Like I played in the front row at school as a one of my teammates played for the Wallabies as a loose head, so it's not like he was right there, and he wasn't that big at the
Yeah.
time. But Eddie was bigger than you at the same ages, right?
Um, I was always bigger than Eddie,
Yeah,
as
you
in
were.
naturally
Yeah,
I was thicker. Um, I would weigh more. You can see like when we're about 15, 16. There's about 18 months between us. But I would always be a bit thicker
yeah,
and I would definitely carry more weight than him. He's
yeah.
very lucky with his genetics. He just never put fat on growing up. He could eat what he wanted and he'd always have like a six pack.
Yeah.
Whereas I would have the same frame, but I would have 10 kilos more fat than him.
Were you doing the same? Like, I know he did a lot of swimming.
Yeah, so
Did you do
that's
that too?
yeah, my kind of footing in sport is swimming. So
Yeah.
from the age of 8, and then it got pretty serious when I was 10, 11. I was a national standard swimmer. And then yeah, did squads and kind of competed at the national stage until I was about 13, 14, and the interest went then. I mean, we were putting in, a good 2 hour sessions 5 or 6 times a week.
Why swimming? Because when, as you know, here you live in Australia now, we've got so many outdoor pools, the weather kind of lends itself to it.
Yeah.
The swimmers here are a bigger deal than they are other places, but in the UK,
Yeah.
especially then,
I
not as
mean,
much.
yeah, the UK obviously produce world-class swimmers.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of those where, once you're into it and you're shown to be good at something, you're kind of swimming's one of the sports that just devours you. You need to spend so much time. And as soon as someone says, oh, if you keep at this, you could end up at the Olympics, you're kind of scared to let it go.
Did you have those conversations?
Well, yeah, I mean that's where probably the drive to stay was,
Yeah.
you can, potentially get to the nationals, you can make the final if you win you come top three. And then it never really I'd stuck with it because it's a shame to let things go, isn't it? So you fall into it because you're good at it. You
Yeah.
start it, you fall into it, you're good at it. Um, I stuck with it because I was there or thereabouts. But
Hmm.
in reality, and this is what I'm conscious of with my daughter, who's a very talented swimmer. If you're not theirs, if you're not the top 1%, it's a thankless sport. You're not going to get much return from the time you have to put into it.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to be kind of, even if you come, say, third in the Olympics, the return on investment is extremely poor. No one's going to know. No one's going to want to sponsor a third place athlete.
Yeah, it's like rowing in that regard, in that.
Yeah, I wouldn't know rowing, but unless you're
I
like,
mean, but the fact that you wouldn't means you do, because
yeah,
you like it's the reason that it's just one of those sports. It's and as you know, you're seeing it from this other side now. But I wonder the extent to which you don't know how much talent you have until you do maybe a decade of work. So
yeah,
you do have to at some stage go, oh, is this juice worth the squeeze? But you also don't know. Like no one told me that I had any chance to go to the Olympics until I was basically there. So
okay,
I
yeah,
stuck with it because I was good and because I kept getting better and I saw the guys that were at that level and it seemed I could reach it, but it certainly
mm,
wasn't at that stage. So I wasn't looking down this 10-year path where none of it might pay off in anything. It
yeah.
was shorter than that.
And that's it with my daughter. She's currently probably, well, no, she is number one on freestyle and butterfly
For
for
her
11-year-old
age.
girl.
Yeah,
Yeah,
cool.
and she's very. You might have seen her on Instagram,
Yeah,
but
I've seen her, like I've seen you training her and
yeah,
she's
she does.
lifting
She can clean
properly
60
and
kilos,
yeah,
and not many women who train can clean 60
yeah,
kilos.
yeah.
She's 11.
She's a weapon.
Yeah, I've had her with a barbell since she was 5.
Yeah,
Conscious of not doing, like powerlifting, more athletic things with her sports. So like clean snatches, a little bit of, like high bar squat, a little bit of deadlift, but not as the point. The point has never been, so let's see how strong you can get. It's
yeah,
always, let's just use this to stay
yeah,
athletic.
yeah.
And
There's
then we got,
plenty of time for that if it's appealing. You've got your
yeah,
whole, yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
So, and then, yeah, she's got into swimming, and I mean, she's gone 28, I believe, for 53. She's gone a 103 for 100 free. And this is when she was 10 years old. She's only
yeah.
just turned 11. So she's a
Crazy.
bit of a phenomenon.
Yeah,
Um, but the danger is like, so the long-term plan for Darcy, selfishly, was to get her to the CrossFit Games. You can enter as a 14-year-old in, I think there's the 14 to 16 age group, and then the
mhm,
16 to 18 age group. So that was the plan, was to get her there, because I see CrossFit as, it's more commercial, more sponsorship. She's going to have a bigger social media presence than swimming. But swimming is the kind of sport that once they see potential, they grab hold of you so tight, and they are so precious about other things. So I've got to, at some point, I'll have to either let her go all in on swimming, or I'll have to say to the coach, we're actually going to do other things until she wants to go all in. So
yeah,
it's a difficult one, because these coaches are just selfish. They've got their objective. They want to showcase their talents
yeah.
with their swimmers. When who's to say that she wouldn't have a better career in weightlifting or CrossFit, or and as a female, unfortunately, her potential to earn money is very slim in terms of professionalism. So she needs to really stand out. And that's typically in female sports. You've got to be an individual. You've got to be above the team, really stand out as an exception. So because there's no chance for her to earn 500,000 a year playing rugby
Yeah,
or
and this is because
soccer.
you think, there's a handful of sports that women's sports where that is the case, and it's obviously trending in that direction, but they're probably soccer.
Yeah, I mean soccer, you've got, the superstar, because you can go to Europe and play
Yeah.
for big money. Soccer's better. It never was. Only the last 4 or 5 years. Rugby, I couldn't name a female rugby player, Australian, for example, all due respect to them. Then so you're looking at individual sports mostly because the professionalism just isn't there in female sports yet, unfortunately. I'll probably get argued to death, but it's the way, women's professional sports growing in terms of commercialism and things like that. So you're looking at tennis,
Mm.
CrossFit, swimming, I think in Australia
Yeah.
is the kind of the top ones where you can
Maybe
really stand out.
golf.
Yeah, golf,
But
mate.
these
Who'd want to play that?
my mum, when we like, she was like, why she'd say, oh, so and so won so and so money at some golf tournament, and she was be like, why didn't you
Mm,
play golf? It's like, well, largely because I was not endowed with any of the genetics that would make
yeah.
one good at that sport, and just happened to be decent at these other things. I could also have not been good at anything. That was always on, but not every young athlete that has a lot of athletic potential has that potential for every sport. So you do have to, are you going to aim for a skill sport, or are you going to aim for a bit of a workhorse sport, or something that's somewhere in the middle? But you got to aim somewhere.
Yeah. So yeah, it's good. I'm enjoying kind of mentoring her.
Yeah.
But it's
And a little
tough.
evolve, she's at a high level, but she's still 11, so a long way to go before any of this is really serious, and she's still just a kid.
But I mean, as you say, you look at China and Russia,
Yeah, that's true.
they
But
they
you,
get
you
them they get them elite from 8,
they
that.
do and I could think of supporting arguments and counter arguments. So, for example,
Yeah.
the Norwegian sporting model is to like stay general for as long as
Yes. Yeah.
possible and then specialize later. But at the same time, the most well-known Norwegian athlete is a guy named Jakob Ingebrigtsen, who won the 5K in Paris and the 1500 in Tokyo as a 20-year-old. And he was basically training like a professional runner as a 10, 11, 12-year-old. So he's from
Mm.
that country that has
Yeah.
that model, but is in the complete opposite. So, you've seen Chinese and Russian athletes that have done it their whole life. They can still get beaten by some American that
Oh, yeah.
found it in college, and it all, I mean, you're going to make the decisions in the best interest of her, and I'm sure give her some
Yeah,
space to
exactly.
indicate what she wants to do,
Mm.
and it'll evolve over time as is. But good to have you, in support. And you went with swimming pretty seriously until you were 13, and
Yeah.
then is that about the time that you found rugby?
Yeah, I found rugby. I mean, I was I wouldn't say I wasn't the best behaved at school, and I used to find outlets outside of school to kind of have fun. And rugby just seemed like a really natural thing to get involved with. I mean, growing up with my two brothers, we all we did was fight. So it was very natural for me to find a physical sport. And rugby just appealed so much. In terms of when I my first game. Obviously didn't really know what I was doing, but I got received the ball and all I knew was to run forwards. And I remember just like boshing someone who went flat on the floor. And then I ran to the next guy and like boshed him over. So that was two people on the floor. And then I had one jump on my back, and then I had one by the collar. And I remember I scored a try from like 40 meters out, and and it just felt so good. Just
Mhm.
being able to run into someone and hear the air get sucked out of them was just a great outlet.
Do you
And it
miss
kept
that now?
well, that's it kind of like, when you hear the phrase like chasing the dragon,
Yeah,
like a drug addict
yeah, yeah,
who they're always chasing that first hit. That's almost what happened with me in rugby, is I had so much fun knocking over three lads and scoring a try that I chased that feeling continuously from that day onwards. But yeah, and then I think almost professionalism kind of takes the fun out of it because it
yeah,
gets, you get caught up with pressure, money, you need to pay the bills. If you're not performing or if you're injured, are you going to get a contract? And then also with professionalism, you have to play in a system.
yeah,
So you have to be a cog. You can't kind of go rogue too
yeah,
often.
yeah,
Otherwise, you don't get picked. If it's like, oh, you can't work in our system, you're gone.
yeah,
So professionalism, although I carved out a career and did well in professionalism, the true fun element of rugby did go.
yeah,
Um, and then I suppose, well, one of the things was to get onto this is, yeah, with that kind of environment of playing professional rugby is you've just got a very strong identity and purpose. Um, I suppose like any sportsman would have. You train all week with your mates. You have fun. Everything's done for you, as in the food's cooked. You throw your washing in the laundry, and then it magically appears back on your peg the
yeah,
next day. You go and have your lunch. Yeah, I then used to go home and play PlayStation and COD, and then do it all again. And then it came to a point of um, a performance on the weekend, and then you'd meet the fans. They'd all pat you on the back. You feel amazing, and then you'd do that for 8 years, and then yeah, all of a sudden it stops. It's a bit of a change.
yeah. I think about all the guys here that play. League here is pretty serious, and it's a big enough competition that there's enough players, and only a small amount of them are going to be able to leverage their playing career into
Mm,
being a commentator or
yeah.
something like that.
Mm,
Everyone else is, go figure it out, and you have to go from this exactly what you've described. Like it's kind of coddled and appreciated, and it's fun in that it's not easy, but it's also not a real job. And
mm,
then it ends.
yeah. And just kind of fast forwarding. Um, I did try and get back, but one of the things that I could do to keep fit and gave me a bit of a purpose and a bit of a drive was finding the ergs.
Yeah.
So I retired on a quite serious knee injury. And the SkiErg was one of the one movements I could do that I could work hard in. So I couldn't cycle, I couldn't row, I couldn't walk. I didn't like running. Um, I could lift weights, I couldn't squat. And then yeah, the SkiErg was one of the first things I found because I just fell in love with the data. So, and the concept to logbook of seeing what the British record was and then seeing what the world record was, and oh, let's train for that.
How long did it take you to, just to begin with? SkiErg is basically the same as just a Stairmaster, or it's just there,
Yeah,
and then you like play around with it, and then there's numbers, and you're like, okay, then when you do, because it's a process, you didn't just start and know there was like it had to be an evolution. So how
yeah.
long did it take you from
Well,
this is the SkiErg to
when the writing was on the wall with rugby, for one reason or another, we used to use it in our conditioning in
mm,
rugby. So I was still signed for Bristol at the time, and I put on Instagram a 500-meter time, and it came out about a 1:23 or something. And someone said, "Oh, by the way, that's a age group um, British record." I thought, "Oh, that's cool. What's the open British record?" And it was like a 1:21. So then a couple of weeks later, I went at 1:19 and thought, "Well, that was good. What's the world record?" And then it kind of just evolutionized from that. And then you find this like really fantastic community of little kind of side plots of there's a competition called the Tour de SkiErg.
mm.
Um, there's little forums and teams, and I just kind of and I enjoy having a bit of a laugh and winding people up, and I'd sometimes goad someone, and then I'd find a little rival over there, and it would just be good fun. It just used to keep me entertained whilst having a really good outlet rather than, outlet drinking or anything like that. That was my outlet, was to use the erg. And so one of my first goals on the ski erg was, oh, no one's ever gone sub 6. So it was 2020, I became the first person to go sub 6 on the ski erg. Um, I think Big Phil actually was one of the first to try. And then, yeah, I managed to do it 2020. And then I had a little bit of a rival with a guy. I don't know if you remember his name. He's kind of disappeared off the scene now, but it's Freddie Schmitter. He was
No.
a Finnish guy who was a former bench press world champion.
Oh yeah.
So me and him had a bit of a ding dong on the 1K. He got it down to about a 2:45, and then I ended up on about a 2:43 before I then tried to get your record on the RowErg for the
Yeah.
ski. Yeah,
During
we
that
kind of,
time, how aware were you of the rowing machine equivalent and that people took that pretty seriously, and some of those were high level athletes, and I
hmm.
can see you now, you've got some, and it could just be because you like winding people up, but the I don't know if it's you're not the friend of the on water rowing community, or or
Well, I think
you're
they're
not
not.
their friend.
Yeah, they're not my friend. I mean, there's a guy at the moment who he caught one of my reels, and he's an on-water rower. There's a bit of a language barrier there, but he basically has taken exceptional offense of me trying to coach people how to row.
Hmm.
So to jump forward, what I kind of do for a living now, one of my streams of income is with the functional fitness space. First of all, I started off in CrossFit, and now Hyrox has come along. And yes, to be fair, I was the 1K world record holder on the 1K ski and the 1K row, and I leveraged that to do a seminar about how to row and ski erg because I've spent enough time on them and I'm pretty good on them. So I teach functional fitness athletes like Hyroxers, CrossFitters how to do it. Bearing in mind that there's limitations in that. Anyway, they don't need to be on water, and I don't need to be on water. I just need to help people be more efficient for that machine. So I've
And
obviously
in
got,
that context, it's like it's almost a get through station as well. It's like, here's just make it efficient, don't do anything stupid.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
So, I mean, the finer intricacies of getting it on the water, I have to admit I don't know. But I don't need to know it. unless I was trying to coach rowers. I'm not trying to coach rowers. I'm trying to coach people to be better. And also, when you look at the wider spectrum of fitness, um, these days, gyms like the gym I own, 98 Riley Street, the Yard, all of them, Fit Stop, BTS, they all will have a RowErg, usually Concept 2, and they all will have a SkiErg. And 6 days out of 7, they will program the ergs. So if that's the form of fitness that someone likes, is turning up to one of those gyms, you're going to be on the erg probably 4 or 5 times a week minimum. Why would you spend that time doing it poorly?
Yeah.
Like, why don't you just step back, listen, buy some education, or at least go out and seek some education, whether it's just YouTube or Instagram. And then you need to take a step back and do it right, because it's a long time. If you're a 20-year-old and no one ever stops you and says, "Hey, your rowing could greatly be improved. If you learn that now, you've got another 25 years of this.
Yeah.
Why don't you
Not
learn to do?"
only that, when every stroke you take, you're creating a pattern. And if it's
Yes.
a bit off, you're just ingraining, you're getting better at
Yeah.
being shit, is how I would put it.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why when you actually try and change people's technique, they go, "Oh, I'm faster to do it that way."
Yeah.
And because it does take that bed-in period. So you do
I
have,
tell you one tip for that one, just turn the screen over. And
yeah,
so you don't get that right now, because that's not what we're doing. And
yeah,
otherwise, because say, just to be very specific, because a lot of rowers can open the body early, so
yeah,
they're
yeah,
underutilizing their legs and then using the swing where they could use it later for some back
yeah,
end acceleration. So they kind of do this off the front, but that can give them better peak power that's less sustainable.
yeah,
So you say, look, let's hang the body, push the legs. Split will be slower because they don't know how to do it, and so then they will revert back because change is hard, and then they're also not getting the reward of an improvement in output.
yeah.
But you know that already.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I've actually gone up to someone in a gym and offered my 2 pence worth, and they've gone, "Thanks, but I just want to work out."
Yeah, 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 yeah,
And it was a friend of mine, or was kind of friend of mine. I said, "Well, if you just," and they just went, "I just want to work out.
yeah,
I don't want your help."
yeah,
And I was just like, "Whoa." And I was like, each to their own. If you don't want to learn to be better, that's fine. If you just want to come in and averagely row for the rest of your life, then do that. But
I've had those too. I try and pick my moments because I feel like I see it all. And if you notice everything, this is training in your public gyms, then that could be not distracting, but it ends up feeling like it's your responsibility, and it's not. But on the odd
yeah,
moments where I'm like, it's sometimes if it's just someone sitting on a phone between sets, and I'm like, whatever reason you have for being here, whatever goal that gets you to this place is not going to be helped by you being on your phone between
yeah,
sets. And sometimes they're like, righto, and then they can course correct and they'll get the benefit of that. But then that is going to be a certain sort of person. And then the amount of times I've had it's been like a 16-year-old bloke and he looks at me like, who the fuck is this asshole? And I'm like, okay, well, I shouldn't, the
yeah,
only reason you would do that is because you're trying to help someone and maybe save them some pain. So,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
but not everyone's going to be receptive to that.
Mm.
And I would think just to,
Uh,
because you and I touched on this via DMs, but have you had any good on-water rowers or guys with good rower performances have any pushback? Because I tend to segment people's opinions based on, would I even respect this person if
mm,
we weren't just interacting? So if someone that I really respect says something to me, then I'll pay it a lot of attention. If I don't know a
mm.
person and I don't respect them, then I
Yeah.
don't necessarily give it the
I,
same.
I think it's the angle at which they come at me.
Yeah,
Is in, if they come at me as I'm an on-water rower, I'm superior, like listen to me. I think I can sense that, and I get it. I'll not try not to be rude, but I will just be a little sarky. I remember a conversation we had is it was early days when I just decided to start rowing, and I put a post up. and said, "Has anyone got any tips?" And I had hundreds of comments and went into your DMs. And obviously, I respected because you held the record at the time. I wasn't even chasing the record at the time. But I said, "Oh, I'm really struggling to get some length, like on the ski, on the rower. Like I'm trying my best." And your response was, don't know if you remember,
No, geez,
it was
I'm worried now.
your response was,
Yeah,
"You're gonna." I said, "Look, I'm trying my best. That's as far forward as I can reach."
yeah.
You said, "You're gonna have to try harder," because it's true. It
Yeah.
was the best thing anyone could have said to me.
Okay.
Because in my head,
Yeah.
I was thinking, well, that's as far as I'm going to get. And I'm not blessed with the anthrometrics and I'm not blessed with the mobility. And that's how I'm going to have to go
Yeah.
forward. And you said, no, you're going to have to reach more forward. You're going to have to
Yeah.
get another. And I said, well, I can't. You said, you can just try better.
Yeah.
So I did, and then I got
And you
a
did.
better stroke.
Yeah.
So,
I think
uh,
part of that is, when I look at you, there's some good on water rowers that are good on the erg, but it's like two different things. So you don't have to have anything to do with the on water anything to go fast on those
yeah, you don't.
machines. And so people like yourself that do, I'm like, that gets all the credit. Um, but the reason, I can be direct too, and I probably would have been thinking, mate, I'm an inch taller than you, which is not much. It's not 8 inches. It's not six. Like we're of the same species. So I do think you can because, ultimately I see the potential in a
Yeah.
person. So with a person has to deal with their own limits on a day-to-day basis. And I'm like thinking of all of the things I've seen. And so I know what's possible. And so I probably thought,
Mm. You knew
no,
it
well, yeah,
was
you
more
can
there.
and you could.
Yeah. Well, made it quite public that I'm going to have another crack at it. Um, I've got my reservations, mainly that I'm a bit more broken than I was 2 or 3 years ago.
Mm,
But Phil, I haven't had a great look at what Phil did, but I've seen some snippets, and one of the things I caught of Phil's was that his drive length was 1.6. And I look back at my data, I didn't even look at this. I didn't even know to look at this
mm,
data point. But my drive length was 1.33. So I gave up 27 centimeters on average um for the one K split. Um, the fact is, the bloke's 6'9" and I'm 6 foot. So he's obviously got a massive advantage in that respect. But it still doesn't mean that I can not try because, we're talking for me to find that extra zero point 0.5 per 500. Um, Something like that could just help me get there because what I need to do, so obviously I can hold a 118,
yeah.
but it's holding it at the 850 mark. And the more economic and efficient I can be early on, that's going to give me later in the race. So that's my kind
Well,
of
you can
approach
definitely
now
get
is,
faster even if you're a bit more beat up. It doesn't seem that it seems like it may have disrupted training, but it doesn't seem like it's going to limit your ability to be faster on the things that you're trying to be faster at. And that is to better your 2K SkiErg world record and then to reclaim the 1,000
yeah.
meter
I
RowErg world
mean,
record.
to be fair, listen, I'm fully aware that Phil has a much greater potential than me. And I think if I beat him by point 0.1, he would come back 6 months later and beat me by point 0.3. I think it's a battle I'm never going to win with Phil. He's a I'm not going to say superior athlete. He's a weapon. He's a big old lump and he can row very well. But all I've set out to do is beat my PB, and that's all I can do. And if I land under Phil, great. And then I think it'll be to the point where there has to be a point where physiologically I tap out. There has to be.
Yeah, there is, but I don't think any one of us can be certain where that is
No.
because you'll keep accumulating knowledge and there'll be facets of your capacity you can improve. So you can keep improving your technique and your base, but your
Mm,
top end might go. And then you've got less recoverability. So it'll get to a point, but you just, you, me, or anyone else aren't going to know
yeah.
where that is. It's that whole thing of when someone says, oh, they just decide they could never, like they decide on a limit without ever putting in the work to find where that limit is. And I'm always like, well, I'll take 5, 10 years if I'm really keen to find out what I can do, because anything less than that, I'm not finding out. So I'm just
Yeah.
fucking about, which is not really what I'm interested in.
Well, on the RowErg, that's almost what I did. Is we had a chat before, but because I got so close to your RowErg score on the SkiErg,
Mm.
I was, zero point 0.5 off per 500. I actually thought to myself, well, if I can, if but just to put it out there, my 2K PB for row is a 557.3,
Yeah.
and my 2K PB for skiing is 557.3. So on paper, I said to myself, well, if I can get that close on a skier, there's no reason why I can't challenge it on the row work. There's physiologically, all I have to do is just flip the movement from this to this.
I
And
mean, I would say that you were blessed with both being right because you did. And then there's a sort of, and I did it in the same direction. So no judgment, but it's a bit naive to go, well, I can do that, therefore I can do that. But then because you did believe it and then you were willing to test whether that was true. So you did the work. And then
yeah,
it turns out it was more true than not. Whereas if you'd been some other person and you hadn't thought like that, you wouldn't done that. And then we wouldn't be having this conversation.
yeah.
So that's the major difference between people that do things and people that
Mm.
don't.
Well, one of and it was only by chance that I found the row work, because when I looked at that, like we did it in sport, in rugby, if you couldn't do a run test, the coach would say do a 2K row work test. And I looked at that thing and I looked at a rower and I thought, well, I'm never going to compete with you. Like, so I never even tried, because for me, I was world class, um, retrospectively for what was out there on the skier. Why would I try and enter a sport where I would not be anywhere near? And I say a sport because it is a sport. Um, so the first job was to just get a sub 6 2K, and that was a very personal thing. I would always just looked at people who could go sub 6 on the RowErg and think, wow, that guy, it kind of says something about someone,
Oh yeah.
because it's a bit like being in shape in your 40s. It kind of shows the world that you care and you look after yourself. Being in shape in your 20s can almost happen by accident if you've got a fast metabolism.
Yeah.
But you've got to know that for someone to go sub 6 on the RowErg, they've had to work bloody hard for that thing.
Yeah. No one could do it just on talent.
No,
No.
it would take someone from scratch probably 12 weeks to get there, if they had everything in their favor, like a good base. So I thought, oh, that'll be a good flex for me to just do that. So I did that. And then, yeah, it was kind of weird entering this realm of competing with the likes of yourself and Phil. Because I when I looked at myself and looked at the RowErg, I just didn't think I could do anything on it. And to be honest, without the help of people like yourself who gave me some pointers, I would have never have happened. And I used a coach, my coach, John Davis. He's an expert in getting results on ergs.
Mm.
Wasn't so much a row coach, he's an erg coach. So it's just knowing the numbers. And that's what I needed, was just someone to know the numbers. So I just enlisted him for the 2K, and he just knew that if I could do X, Y, and Z prior to a 2K, that would indicate I've got that 2K.
Given that your 2K, you'd already gone sub 6 for 2K on the SkiErg, like this is, and you're probably the only person that's done it in this order, because I think I think the ski 2K is harder for in well, just by the numbers,
Yeah.
it is. And
Well, yeah.
I wonder how much because of the same, it would have been the same numbers. So you must have, even though it's a different machine, you must have been knowing when you were in the ballpark.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
one of the best workouts that there was two or three along the way that I would use to determine my fitness. It was 8 500 ons with 2 minutes
That
off.
stuff. Yeah.
And my PB on that for the SkiErg was 127.
Yeah.
Um, the other one that I used to ballpark was for a couple of years, and it's still going. There was this workout called ski golf and row golf, where it was 18 minutes on, minute off. So minute on, minute off, 18. And they
Mm.
did this game where if you got like a 340, you used to get a double bogey, or was it a bogey, or you used to get an eagle. And then if you got like a 330, you used to get a whatever one under par is. And then you got a par was like a 310. And so I think obviously my best score was a 30 minus 36, which was the top score. And I think I averaged for that was like a 127.9 for the 80 minute on minute offs.
Yeah.
And I just remember getting to like number nine, holding that. And I thought to myself, oh my God, I've got another nine of these. And
Yeah.
you just take them chunk by chunk. So you do nine, you're at absolute capacity. Like, at the end of the minute, my heart rate would be like 185, 186. And then you just work in chunks. It's okay, let's get to 12. Let's get to 15. Let's get to 18. And then by the time you finish, you would have felt it. It's a phenomenon where everything's just where it should be.
Mm.
Like you're just in perfect harmony with the machine. You're firing on all cylinders. Your heart rate's at max. So like I've seen a 202 heart rate when I've been, and the thing is I can't get a 202 now. If you said go give me 20 minutes on the SkiErg and give me a max heart rate, I would tap out round about 190. When I'm fit, I can just keep going, keep going, keep going. And I think I've seen like a 205 before
Mm.
because I was just able to push that hard. But it's a weird phenomenon where you can just accept more pain.
Yeah. I
Just
mean, when
accept.
your body's up for it, and then there's a feeling of competence that comes with knowing that it's hard, but also that you can do it, which is
Mm,
in itself is reinforcing.
yeah,
Listening to you talk about, you know, it seems as though you know that for you to go as fast as you need to go, you have to focus on yourself and what you're doing. But you also are trying to beat the man if possible and learn from how they've gone about what they're doing. So I'll take what they're doing and I'll incorporate it into what
yeah.
I'm doing, and then I'll try and do the best that I can. But
Mm,
it also seems like you're looking at the person that's done a thing and going, okay, I see what attributes they've got, but I reckon I've got some attributes too, and then that's why
yeah.
I'm capable of doing this. And it does seem like I don't know if it's coming from a rugby background because when you know there's contact, like
Mm,
I remember being like say when I was a loose head and you line up against the other team and you could see whoever's got number three on,
yeah,
you're like, well, I'm going to be seeing you real soon, right? You're like,
yeah,
whereas if you come from any other sporting background, that's not
yeah.
necessarily the case. It's not as combative. So you draw inspiration from even some of the, like with ski, golf, or like that's not personally
No,
captivating for me, but I know for other people, that's something with which you can get a bit of motivation to work
yeah.
really hard. So it seems like you're willing to get motivated in every direction in order to do the work you need to do.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things on producing um, a kind of staple workout is that when if you're that way inclined to post your workout or not, I take it or leave it. But say if I said to myself halfway through, I want to get a 127, And I know that if I can't hold a 127, let's say if I get to rep 7 and I tap out, I'm not posting that thing
Mm.
because I can't show that I've done 7 at 127 and I pussied out on number 8 and I came in on like a 132. That just basically says that I'm soft in the head. So the shame, well, I want to post it. So I get to the number 8 and I think, right, I'm gonna have to do this now.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm not posting this thing. So 9 times out of 10, rather than not post it, I would make sure I got it.
Yeah.
Because I want to post it. I want to, because then that will inspire me to do the next thing and the next thing.
Yeah.
Not that I need that validation from Instagram or wherever you post it, but it's kind
No,
of,
you're putting yourself under the pump.
yeah, it's the pressure for yourself. So
Yeah.
if you want to post this and talk about your journey, you've got to, and people say post the good with the bad, but like not always. Like sometimes you think, oh, that's not post worthy because it's just,
I try to as this for the same reason to be like, I will magnify the fuck up here in
yeah,
order to make it such a
interesting
punish
enough.
yeah, that I
Yeah,
like I won't do that again. And but it's all coming from the same place. Like
yeah,
it's owning it either way. And I think you would have done well within a said on water rowing squad. Imagine when you were say 18 to 22, like in a college program, and you've got guys, they're going to be of different abilities. There's a lot of guys to butt heads with, and sometimes you might be at the top of the pile, sometimes not, but
mm,
everyone knows everyone's numbers, and there's
yeah,
nowhere to hide. And so that thing that's keeping you going, that you can't back off and you can't definitely can't stop because you would have to live with being that person and have all your teammates know that that's
yeah,
on the table, which is just the same thing you're trying to do by yourself on an erg.
yeah, 100%. Like in rugby, I came through the state school, so I had to go to a local rugby club, and then I made, like a regional team. And I think this is where my drive comes from, as well as competing with my brothers, is because I had to work and always show. I was never satisfied if I didn't make a squad. I'd always think, why? Why is that guy getting ahead of me? What does he offer? So then when I'd meet him on the pitch, I'd try and end his life. Not literally,
Yeah,
but
I
I
know.
would try and hurt the guy and
Yeah.
say, look, like, why are you in that shirt?
Yeah.
That should be me in that shirt. And then I'd play like I was possessed. And, surely not get you noticed. Same in the professional environment. There's obviously, you're in a 40-man squad and only 15 of you are getting the shirt.
Mm,
And it feels horrendous when someone is, and you're talking money now as well. Like it's another motivation, not just pride of wearing the shirt, which, unfortunately, professional rugby comes down to money, is that the guy who gets the shirt more often than the guy who doesn't get the shirt could be on £50,000 more
yeah.
because he's seen as the starter. So you think, well, I want that £50,000. And then you start playing for England, if you're getting the shirt in the first team squad more, then if you're an English prop or, an Australian prop, you're getting looked at in the England squad, and then you get £25,000 to play in the national team per game. You think,
Match payments. Yeah.
and then the money gets real serious, and that's all from making sure that you're ahead of someone. And that's what I mean. I love the quote, standing on the shoulder of giants,
Yeah.
because most things wouldn't happen if it wasn't if a benchmark hadn't been made. So, example, your 1K time wouldn't have been beaten by me because I wouldn't have had a benchmark. Like if your time was a 142, I would have got a 141.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If your time at the time when I was going for it was a 139 dead, I would have gone 139, 38.9.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
have just made sure that I'd beat it.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. And that's like with Phil now. Phil obviously had my time to chase. And then I've made a conscious decision to have a look. Now I say have a look because um, it's all lots of variables, but I believe I can do it because I believe at the time when I was going for the 1K, I thought I was going to land on a 118. All the data we spoke about, like, when you're ready. And so I didn't have a set time of training. It was just when I'm going to go.
Yeah.
And my data was telling me a 118. So on the day, like I was holding a cruise pretty nicely. Probably went out a little hot. I think I did the first 200 at 116, and then I went through the halfway at 117.
Yeah.
And then I started seeing 119s, 120s, 121s, and then across the line at like a 128. So I ended up doing the last 200 at a 124. Um, so I slightly under performed a little bit. So that in alone, that single performance alone has driven me to believe that I can have another crack. I mean, but I was satisfied at the time. And that's quite often is the limitation of humans, I believe, is just doing enough sometimes. I mean, yeah, because from there, like there's no monetary value in
Yeah.
me going zero point 0.5 faster.
Well, it's
Um,
also just to state the obvious, it's not only is it not rewarding in that regard, but it's not entirely pleasant to sort of have to
yeah.
show up and execute it, and the discomfort is just all sandwiched into a shorter. So like the shorter the event, the more
The
intense
more intense the discomfort, yeah.
it is, and the long I've done a
I mean,
24 hour. It's
the
it's
the I don't know what goes on a physiological level, but the cortisol must be through the roof.
Yeah, your body
Or
feels like it feels like it might be dying, and you're saying
yeah,
we are going into the fire,
yeah,
and then that's what the sport is, and so you have to be real clear about like that you have a purpose going for the thing, and if you then beat the record, that was the goal, and then even if you know you can get better,
mm.
because you also know that well we can always get better, and
You
it'll
need a
never be
reason.
enough.
Yeah, I think
So.
the way I'm wired is I need a reason. And since the 2K, so sorry, since the 1K row, I have tried to do a few other things that no one's done before. So I did try and do a sub 6 row bike and SkiErg in 24 hours or
Thought that
12
was going
hours.
to be pretty hectic. Like,
Yeah, so I mean, the only one I haven't done, which if you said here's, I mean, it's been done. Jason Marshall is the only person I believe. Yes, he is.
under six on the bike erg.
Yeah, not on the biker, but he's the only one who's done under
Oh,
six,
on all three. Yeah,
all
yeah,
three,
yeah,
because
yeah.
me and him are the only one who's done sub 6 on the
On
skier.
the ski. Yeah.
So I know that, I've banked a sub 6 row, I've banked a sub 6 ski. At some point in my life, I could bank a sub 6 bike,
Yeah.
but I'm not the first person. So the rush to do it isn't there now.
Yeah. Not
I can,
you wouldn't be the first to do all three, but
yeah.
then you would be the first to do them all on the same day, hence the appeal.
Yeah, so that was so as I say, if you give me 4 weeks and offered me $2,000, I would go and do it. Right. But I've got no real incentive to do it. But to do it on the same day. Now, what the real magic of that challenge was to do anything to get a sub 6, you know how much it takes. So you have to put all of your energy into that modality. Um, and I could prove I did it on the SkiErg and I proved I did it on the RowErg. But to be able to have to spread yourself thinner across three modalities
Yeah.
was the real magic in it. So that's what I wanted to prove because, I've proven I can give myself 8 weeks to go sub 6 here or 8 weeks to go sub 6 there. But to give myself time to go sub 6, sub 6, sub 6 on the same day, I thought would be pretty special.
I
Uh,
thought so too, and maybe it'll come back around. And I know that there's the difference between thinking, okay, that's achievable, and it is theoretically, but you have to have some things go right,
yeah,
and you've got to kind of catch the wave at the right time, and sometimes it
yeah.
plays out, and sometimes it doesn't.
I
And that's
mean,
what we're all trying to do, everyone that's in some
yeah.
version of this game.
So when I said that, I kind of said it, and the reason I say it publicly is to put the pressure on me.
Yeah, to go do the work to make it happen.
Yeah, because I don't like being I don't like being coming across as a fool. Like, oh, James just said this. And it's frustrated me that I've said two or three things now. Like I had to go at the 500,
Mm.
and 500 is pure top end speed, as you know. And I just couldn't get that. So everything under your strength ceiling, everything under your top end is easier. So if I could hold, I don't know what even a max, what I don't use wattage, but let's say I could produce 1500 watts and the world record needs to be 750. That means that I'm operating at 50% of my max. All right. But if I can only produce 1000 watts and I still needed 750, that means I'm operating at 75% of my
Yeah.
watts. So I just couldn't get that extreme top end.
I was the
Like,
same way.
yeah.
It
So
was just a little too, I mean, I could get in the ballpark. And I figured that was going to be a challenge for you, but then I've also know you're stronger than a lot of the guys that can, but it's not the same thing.
yeah, like that's what I was banking on. I mean, to look at if I was to directly compare myself to the person I was chasing at the time, which was Big Phil, um, in my head, I could justify to myself, no one else, is I can squat more than him, I
Yeah.
can bench more than him, I can deadlift more than him. On those facts, I should be able to erg faster than him, and I just couldn't.
You
It
know the
just,
thing you mentioned before about the stroke length,
yeah,
and it's like, if it's shorter and mine is the same, it's shorter, you can lean back, you can lean forward, you can stretch it out a bit. But I'd row in a boat, sometimes in a pair with the guys that are 6'8" to 6'10".
yeah,
And so you can turn yourself inside and out and they've almost got to row with a little restraint and you can go pretty well,
mm,
but you know that there's a real difference. And
mm,
so if on an erg, if I'm competing against the same guys and I was, then you either need to take more strokes
yeah,
or you need to have more power per stroke. And I think that even if you were able to have more power, the difference wasn't enough for it to
yeah.
compensate for the difference in length.
What I think what it comes down to, um, when it comes to the last 20% of the race, I think the fact that it's cost you more energy to hold that pace than it has someone with longer levers or longer reach, um, it just hurts you too much towards the end.
Mm,
It's a bit like that top end analogy. If your top end's up here, that means you only have to operate down here to get the record. It's the same as if the length is naturally greater, and then that's just going to pay you back
yeah,
down.
it's more efficient, and then the efficiency will show up as you get further through.
Yeah, so as I start going backwards, their energy reserves are still there.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
and I mean that, and you can't do much about it. So what you can do about it is you can get fitter and stronger,
yeah,
which trumps that.
yeah.
Uh,
Strength can improve the power per stroke, and then if you're fitter, you can and add more agile, which is both technical and fitness. But then you can take more strokes.
yeah, take more strokes,
Yeah,
which means just getting more efficient on the erg. Just,
yeah,
I mean, I can still improve my technique. I look at my technique now, especially when I'm not sprinting, and I see so much room for improvement. But back to that conversation about when you said you're going to have to try better. Um, I just sometimes I just can't connect the dots to make it look better.
yeah,
Now, the difference is when I'm sprinting is what I feel is because I'm coming forward that hard, that what happens is I kind of concertina up a little bit more with the momentum of coming into the catch,
hmm
which kind of compresses me, which means I can catapult back out.
Yeah.
Now, what I could do in that respect, so I'm using like, because my shins naturally only get to around here,
Yeah.
but with momentum means I can squish them here, which means it's actually going to get a bit of a stretch reflex to come back. And then I could lean back more.
But
But
then
then
you've got to get back over as
you've got,
well.
yeah.
Yeah.
So and then I'm thinking, like, yeah, if I could, there's two ways I'm thinking about this now to go forwards. Is one is, could I just go longer and smoother and operate on like a 36 strokes per minute and just whoosh and try and relax and control the 118, or do I go the opposite way and just stick within my drive range, which I'm comfortable at, which I don't have to overreach or overlean, and just hit it more often?
You probably do both. Like
You
you both.
switch strategies.
No, you try and row longer and at the same
That's
rate. So
yeah,
so yeah. So I think if you can also play around with the foot position because it's a trade-off. Like if you've got your feet higher, you can
you're
have a
gonna be more compact,
more direct foot pressure. But if it's lower, then you can give yourself more
more
space.
reach. Yeah.
Um, and I also
What about a seat raiser? Yes and no. I
I think it
tried
ends
one.
up doing the same thing relative to the foot plate. And you
When
want to stay horizontal because if
yeah, so you don't want to be like that.
your vertical height ends up making the thing can go up and down a bit.
Yeah, yeah. So you want to be
Yeah. But the thing that you talked about where, it's relaxed and powerful, you want that at the high rate, which is the challenge. But then I think if instead of just having the training periodization be now we're developing these physiological attributes, whether it's base and then you layer in intensity as you get further through and closer to a target, then as you get really close to it, it becomes even more specific. But if through this stage of things, you haven't practiced the technique at race rate, at race pressure, without race intensity, so without the accumulation of lactic acid. So it should be short enough that it's not fatiguing and that you don't have to deal with the discomfort of the work, which is going to come later. You're doing it in a very relaxed. So your body's like, this is normal, this is
yeah.
normal, this is normal. And then you've got all this time that as you layer it on there, it's still normal. But if you're trying to learn that technique when you feel like you're on fire, that's going to be harder to do. And then that's what most people are doing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting the different approaches. And as I say, I'm pleased to be in the conversation because um as I say, I looked at this the RowErg and I literally um I came back off a shoulder injury, and that's the only reason I jumped on the thing is because I couldn't ski and I couldn't do any lifting. Um and then to get myself from a relatively short run up to get myself into contention of the 1K. And
Mm.
Phil had been trying to do it for 4 or 5 years, and I just came along in 12 weeks and did it. And now it wasn't 12 weeks. What it was
Yeah.
a lifetime of work
Yeah.
accidentally led me to that point. Like my swimming career.
Yeah.
I swam, squads until I was 14, and then professional rugby, and all the work on the SkiErg, probably millions of meters on the SkiErg, and then literally compacted that into a 12-week block.
You know who else swam when he was younger?
Who's that?
Phil.
Oh, yeah. So
You
I've,
know who else swam when they were younger? Josh Dunkley Smith,
um,
who's got
Kate, Kate
T.
Hilliard,
Yeah.
she was a swimmer.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty good base.
Yeah. And it's surprising that there must be something in it that stays with you
Yeah. I think
throughout.
it's that you have to control your breathing.
Yeah.
The
So,
stroke cycle, because you're not going to have that anywhere else. Because when you're
mm,
running, when you're young, you can just kind of pant. Swimming, it has to like full
yeah.
inhales and exhales. And when else are you going to teach that? Plus, then there's the being at peace with just doing the work and staring at the black line. That's not normal, but
Yeah.
it then sets you up.
yeah, of what's required
Yeah,
to
yeah,
achieve things.
yeah. I think
Uh,
swimming and then gymnastics, it seems like
The
with
discipline, yeah, the
women that do
time,
gymnastics, that they could have done 2 or 3 serious years when they were kids, and then it shows up in their body for the rest of their life
yeah,
somehow. And like that's abnormal. That's a clue. All of these are
yes.
clues, and you can start
Mm.
joining the dots. That's why I'm like, well, with you and Phil and John, like it seems like a lot of people that are handy on these apparatuses, which are what they're doing is they're testing your psychology and your physiology in a
Yeah,
very objective way. There's no conditions, there's no opposition. It's just execute your capacity. And then the people that can do that, well, there's going to be more things in common than not.
yeah, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
I mean,
I I
we
wonder
spoke
with your
about that.
goals, with the ski and the row, if there's a part of you that goes, okay, well, that's more challenging than doing just one or the other. Now, the appeal, of course, is that it's more challenging, but you have to spread yourself a little thinner
Mm.
towards both of them. Is that something that I mean, you've obviously thought about it, but how do you think about it?
In terms of
Well,
where do
I
I
would say sometimes, like if I'm working with someone, they're like,
direct my energy?
well, just because there's any number of cool things to do, right?
Yes.
And someone that's got talent can do more than one cool thing. But I also think you can only chase one chicken at once.
Yeah,
And
so don't get me wrong, I would love to be able to do more things. High rocks, ultra running, triathlon, it all appeals to me.
yeah,
It's just I can't do them.
yeah,
I beat myself up a little bit too much.
yeah.
Not built for them.
Would you be okay doing those at,
Recreation.
well, yeah, as a 118 kilo bloke doing high rocks is not going to be elite, but you could be elite within the context of what you can do.
Um, yes, I would. And there was a stage of my life not too long ago. It was after the 1K, and it was a period where I tried to go down this hybrid route. I tried to do a triathlon, so I bought myself a posh bike, $10,000 bike. I started swimming laps in the pool back, back like I did back in the day. I tried to run and I tried to lift, and I broke down. My knee has got very little cartilage in it.
Mm.
I had to have I've chipped some more cartilage off. I had to have a clear out in late 2004, 24, sorry, early 24. So I kind of did that, but then I ground myself into the ground. I did a high rocks with my mate. We did an hour 10. I worked hard and I enjoyed working hard. As in the running didn't come natural, but it kind of reminded me of that rugby day where you just get up and get on with it. Um, but then, yeah, I kind of lived like that for about a year and I broke down. So I couldn't handle it because I'm too heavy. I've got too many injuries, too many limitations. So I've almost gone full circle of, well, what am I good at? What's gonna not hurt me? What am I going to be, uh, you know, competitive at? And it always circles back down to erging.
Mm.
Now, there is some things that involves erging. So there's a Deca Strong, which I actually placed first in Sydney for, and I plan on going to the World Champs. I believe I can possibly podium in that. I probably need to lose 10 kilos to podium in that.
What's the format?
It's 10, it's a bit like High Rocks in terms of it's 10 events back to back. So there's Deca Fit, Deca Strong, Deca Mile. Deca Fit's the most running at 500 meters per in between the events. Mile is 160 times 10, so a mile. And then Deca Strong's no running. So obviously Deca Strong's going to suit me. And it's similar events to High Rocks. So there's a box step over, there's a wall ball sit up, there's a RowErg, there's a SkiErg, there's a farmer's walk, there's an air bike, there's a sled push, a sled pull, a burpee, and you just go back to back. They're typically about a minute on each event, average. and you just smash through them as fast as you can.
It's
Um,
like high rocks in that it's just a race to get through it all.
yeah, just start to finish. As soon as you've done the reps on one
Yeah.
event, you just dart to the next one, and yeah. So Deca Strong appeals to me.
Do you think that even, if you were going to say there's all of these possibilities, and there's because you've got some skills, you have had to rule out the stuff that's appealing, but maybe you're not suited for because of your frame and because of your sporting history. And then you're coming back around to your wheelhouse, but then there's stuff that's peripheral to that that's
Yeah.
you could probably also be pretty good at, but you
So
have to establish your own what's hierarchy of meaning, what's important to you.
yeah, I mean, so the thing with erging is there's no BIKERG champs, there's no RowErg champs. Sorry, there's no SkiErg champs.
Yeah.
There's online
Not
champs.
outside of the sprints, which is this,
SkiErg.
yes, yeah, the online,
Yeah, there's no like physical
yeah,
medal tournament.
yeah.
The RowErg is obviously a sport. It's centered around and obviously I'm restricted in terms of traveling and with a young family. And yeah, I guess that's where the limitations are with erging. In terms of so I'm looking at a few things that involve the erg. So for fun, the gym I run, we're going to the turf games,
Mm,
which is just something a bit of a fun, bit of a community day we're doing. There's the DECA, and then there's a new one that's launched out of the UK called a triathlon. So that's 20 minutes max SkiErg,
mm.
2 minutes rest, 20 minutes max BIKERG, 2 minutes rest, 20 minutes max RowErg. And they've done it really well in terms of there's a gym tour, so like gyms can pay, you can host a triathlon. So I'm actually hosting one at my gym, LFG. And then there's a leaderboard. So they've done a great job with the leaderboard, a bit like the Concept 2 leaderboard. So what I've kind of said to myself is if I can get myself extremely fit with low danger activities, so like no pounding the pavement, I don't need to have 250 kilos on my back to do them. I can get extremely fit, have fun, and then once they're out the way, I can then sharpen the knife and go for one or two records. So I really want to get this. So when I first had a dab at the 2K SkiErg, I landed at a 5:57. All I wanted was a sub six. And since then, my when I was training for the 1K, I've looked at some data and I truly believe I could go sub 550 at the time.
Mm.
So I think to myself, oh, I've left that there. Like if someone could come along and take that now, when I at one point in history had the ability to push that further down, but I had no reason to. Back to what we were saying is the drive for me to beat a 550 is the way I liken erging is you sit down or you're just about to start the erg. No one's making you do it.
No,
No one's
no.
putting a gun to your head and saying, give me 7 minutes of your life with as much pain as possible. It's a bit like lining yourself up to a rose bush naked and jumping in it. Why would you do it?
Or putting your hand in the fire and keeping it there.
Yeah, why?
I
So
used to think about it, just to interrupt for a moment. With rugby, there was a chance you were going to get hit and hurt. Like that was on the cards, but it
yeah,
wasn't certain like it is with the
yeah.
erg. Like it's a guarantee. Because if
So
it's
and
not there, it's not going to be a meaningful performance.
yeah, so that I fully admit that I need an external driver
Mm.
for me to get myself ready to turn up in front of the erg and hurt for 2 minutes 40 or 5 minutes 50. There has to be a reason. If it's just to knock 2 seconds off on paper, there isn't a reason there. So I guess I can find a reason for the skier. The reason would be that at some point in time, someone's going to come along and bet a 5:57. I know that for sure.
Yeah.
So if I can get it down even now to like a 5:54,
Well,
fantastic.
you know that you you know the reasons why you could have gone faster, and so that's part of what you want to do
Yeah,
is capture some of that potential, make it a harder stretch for whoever's going
yeah,
to go after it next.
yeah. And that's
Yeah,
right. And I truly think the SkiErg, I don't think I can get back to that level again,
for the
which
one.
comes back to the 1K
Yeah,
ski, the
yeah,
240.
yeah.
And that brings me back to what I've said about this 1K is I always knew it was going to get beaten. Um, the internet's quite good at leaving a paper trail.
Mm.
Uh, I think there's a young American kid, is it Harrison? Isaac and his
Seems
brothers.
familiar. He's like a big kid that's gone fast.
Yeah, he's
Low
got like
junior
a
records.
42 or something like that, or
Yeah,
40, he's even probably gone a 41. So I thought, oh, he's got 15 years to get it.
yeah,
Phil's only 30.
yeah,
He's got another 6 or 7 years to beat the time. So I always knew it was going to fall, but it's fallen at a time when I can do something about it.
yeah,
And I needed to make a I sat on it for about 2 weeks, and then I came to the conclusion I'll give it a crack.
yeah,
So I think if I'd left it, I'd probably think, oh, I should have gone for it, and I'll be
yeah.
telling the grandkids that I should have gone for it.
Okay.
So
How much, and just to wrap up here, because I feel like I understand a little bit more about what drives you, and you have to have some motivation to do some of the stuff that we've done because it's not rewarding in any other way that like,
just quickly, did
yeah.
did you consider having a crack at the 1K when
No, because I'd had,
that had been truly parked?
yeah, I think at that stage and then I did a few 500 attempts and then had some traveling and it was kind of off the boil and just
Yeah,
wasn't erging. But at that stage, it would have been 20 years of having a pretty serious
yeah.
connection in the machine. And
Your record stood longer than mine. Yours was about 6 years, wasn't it?
yeah, I mean, for a while, but I had the same. I figured that there was going to be that I know of so many guys with more talent for that than I
You knew it was going to
have.
go. Yeah,
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 so I was like, if anyone that does the work that I've done that has more talent, then they'll go faster.
yeah,
So that's inevitable. It's just a matter of when and whether, some of the guys that could be really fast, that are fast over 2K, get
yeah.
excited about the one. It could be one of them, or it was going
And,
to be
and
a
also,
big
I think
Phil.
you have to appreciate, like Phil only ergs, but he's also got other endeavors with his rowing. But a lot of these on water guys, they're too busy actually training for on water stuff. They haven't got an interest in the 1K.
Yeah, or the energy
Yeah.
and the more of that training you do, the more it saps your top end. So I
So,
reckon
so like the middle goes bigger, but the top end goes smaller. Is that kind
yeah,
of,
yeah, yeah, for sure. So
yeah,
I did a 120 500 as a 17-year-old, and I think if I'd 15 years later and I'd basically all been rowing, I would have been a 117. So as an elite rower, it would have been maybe 117, somewhere in there, 116, 117, 118. Not impressive compared to what you and I would find impressive now.
yeah,
And it's because you have to do all this volume. So if you're doing
yeah,
my 5K was good, 10K stuff, I could run for days, ride for days, but top power, which was my
yeah.
actual attribute,
And
it
that's
just
what
kind of flattened.
I'm semi scared because I've said to myself I'm going to have 3, 4 months of just base building. And I'm actually doing the work and I'm thinking to myself, so at the moment, say I'm holding like a 148 for 8Ks of work. I'm actually thinking to myself, how the hell am I going to get down to a 118? I'm actually
Well,
thinking,
same as you did last time, but I think you could produce 118 now, right? It's just a matter of whether you have to do it for 2 minutes
yeah,
and 30 something seconds.
yeah. I think
So
just
36
that's it.
ideally.
But I do feel like the more work I'm doing slower, the duller the top end is getting.
Well, right, that's the reason to keep it in, but to
Yeah,
keep it that also just to treat it as skill practice.
yeah,
And
yeah.
then that way you maintain that. We didn't do any of that. We didn't
Mm,
do overspeed stuff. The whole time as well, my I was trying to keep my body weight down. So
yeah, yeah,
I might at the moment about 106, which is probably not too far away from my set point. My faster stuff on the erg was for the shorter distances 110 plus 110 to nudging towards 115, and then my fastest 2K was 95.
Oh, really?
And the whole time I was rowing, I was trying to keep it between like 92 and 95 and underpinning calories for my basically my entire 20s in order to do that.
Yeah.
So your
Not,
body is just not
yeah,
lending itself towards being as strong as possible. And I also went in the other direction. I was like, if I'm going to be good at this sport, who are the guys that are good at this sport? Then they're not stronger than me. They
yeah,
are fitter than me, so I need to be fitter than I am.
yeah,
But then I think I just diluted some of my strength in order to do it. But I wouldn't be worried about that for you because
yeah,
you're still as of today very strong, and your recent faster stuff is not so far away. And
yeah. It'll
if
come
you,
back pretty
yeah, and if
sharp.
you layer it some of it in,
Yeah,
by
yeah.
the time you need to be out, there's two games. There's being able to produce the power and then sustain the power, and you can work on this
Just kind of
one.
bring them together
Yeah,
slowly. Yeah.
that's exactly what the game is.
Mm.
One thing I do want to understand is you have a need to, or at least a place within you that wants to go, okay, here's the pile of blokes, and I want to be on top of that pile, if possible, whether it's I want that jersey, and
Yeah, I
it's
think,
because there's better outcomes, but also there's a pride thing as well.
well, funnily enough, like when I retired from rugby, there was quite a big, I kind of ran on adrenaline for a year,
Yeah,
as in I went from earning a lot of money to earning nothing. So there was that fight or flight mode of I've got to establish myself. I've got to
yeah,
start PTing, which is what I do for a living. Fundamentally, I'm a personal trainer, fitness coach. I've got to start building this. And for about a year, maybe 2 years, I kind of ran on adrenaline and just had to survive. Then once I kind of got over that, I settled into what I was settled into, and I kind of had a loss of identity. And what gave me identity was the ergs. So being the best ski erger on the planet, and at the time the best 1K erger on the planet, re-gave me that sense of purpose. It
yeah.
gave me an identity. And I must admit, when Phil broke it 3 or 4 weeks ago, it fucking hurt a little
Mm,
bit.
mm.
Not because Phil broke it, nothing against Phil, but part of me got taken away. And
Mm.
that reminded me of what happened at rugby. My identity of a rugby player got took away. So
And
that's
that's
kind of,
even though you knew and expected someone would take the record, and you knew your
yeah,
rugby career would,
I think I didn't really pay enough attention and I didn't expect it quite when I did.
yeah.
So I didn't build myself up for it. So it kind of happened. And yeah, it's a bit, probably a little bit embarrassing just admitting it that it kind of, yeah, it cut me a little bit. Um, just because it brought back a lot of emotion of retiring and having to refine myself and, yeah, like, and things like that. But,
It
um,
makes it makes sense, but if I take it back, so if you've got the purpose of the ergs are serving at the moment and how they help give you an identity post rugby and how rugby worked for you, like it was intuitively made sense right from the start, but
mm,
and it became a profession. But you present as having above average drive to be at the top of and the pile. And I say this with no criticism, it makes sense to me, but I then think of your family, right? You've got a younger brother who, by any account, is a bit of a weapon.
Mm.
And I wonder, must have spent a good portion of your life with this kind of bottom up pressure, and brothers are going to compete, and you guys actually had fights
Yeah.
with each other. So, how much has that come from having one of the strongest people that have ever existed as a younger brother? And but you as a person is like, well, I'm pretty fucking good too. And so, did you
Yeah.
develop this early on? Like, I'm going to have to fight here just to maintain my place in the pecking order.
Yeah, definitely, definitely you've got it pretty much bang on there.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, you're your own biggest fan, so I back myself like in terms of, getting a place in professional rugby and just trying to how to word it, but like I'm very confident, but it then it comes down to showing what I'm worth on the stage, on some
Mm.
kind of stage. So Eddie obviously found it in strongman, and he was extremely successful. He kind of hit the wave perfect. He's very intelligent like that with his charisma. So he found his niche. Um, and part of me thinks that, well, with rugby, it was kind of more variables coming at me. You know, like I did my knee at 19, um, selection, kind of you make decisions on which contract to sign.
Yeah.
So there's all these things coming at you.
Different
And
coaches can have a different
yeah,
opinion.
and
Yeah.
coaches,
Yeah.
and I kind of left rugby disappointed, as in I don't feel as though it went 100% my way. I feel as though
Mm.
I took a plenty from it, and I'm really proud of what I did. But if things had stacked up better, I could have played for England. If I didn't get injured one time, or if a coach really, really, really backed me and stuck with me instead of carting me off every time I'd have a bad game, you know. So I do feel as though I could have gone better in rugby, and
Yeah.
I chose rugby. So my best years were chosen by something I felt didn't really go my way,
Yeah.
where Eddie's channel went
Yeah.
great. Now, obviously, he had his own adversities to overcome, and he did fantastic, but they just seemed to stack up. So post rugby, yeah, I've still got that in me. Like and the beauty of being a fitness influencer, very strong word that I don't
Hmm.
really like, but
Yeah.
I'm a
Yeah.
fitness professional. I'm
Yeah.
making money from doing things with my body. All right. Whether it's directly or indirectly. So
Yeah.
someone might buy a program of mine because I can prove that my technique and my training methods work.
Yep.
So indirectly, my endeavor has earned me money. Um, lost my trail of thought then, but yeah. So I'm still
Well, you've
trying
been
to.
able to do that now after, like, you've been able to make something of it.
Yeah. So the point of erging is it's 100% in your control.
Yeah.
Like the chance of getting hurt erging are very slim. If you're diligent in your weights and things like that, you're not going to get hurt. You could be stupid and hurt yourself squatting, of course. But yeah, it's given me a really good identity that I can control the variables a lot
Mm.
more than I did
Hmm.
when I was a rugby player. Because I do feel as though my best years kind of slipped me
Yeah.
choosing the rugby and the way that panned out. So I've got a little bit of a chip on my shoulder with the rugby at the moment, in terms of like it could have been so much better.
Funny, it's how I feel about rowing
Mm,
in general, in that by the time I got to the end of it, I have to accept my own performances, but that there was other things
yeah,
outside of my control that at times felt like they weren't in my favor, but that I was a hair's breadth away from zigging and zagging and could have been an Olympic medalist or an Olympic gold medalist, but wasn't. And I had teammates that are, and I have to live
yeah,
with that.
live
But
with
then
that, yeah,
getting to the other side, I can go, well, I can do these things, and they're all under my control. And so that's why I
yeah,
can, in training, if I fuck up, I can own it because I'm like, that's
yeah,
on me. And if it goes well, I'll own that because that's on me
yeah,
too. And if it doesn't, like it's for better or worse,
yeah.
it's I'll take all the responsibility because that means I can take all the ownership if it does.
Yeah. I mean, I'm quite lucky in terms of, oh, it won't be a minute, baby. I'm quite lucky in terms of, yeah, like I've got a good, like you kind of, you set yourself up to perform. So you've got to create your environment to be conducive to your goals. So if you've got loads of stress, and if you're in, say, banking or finance or insurance, and you've got to do that 9 to 5, the chances of you hopping on an erg and giving 100% is very slim. I've kind of, through hard work, facilitated it myself, that now I can block out 4 hours for training. I
Mm,
can do what I need to do, admin and the kids, and then I can have from 9 to 1 o'clock of training. Now, the only thing I've got to get right is I've got to wake up fresh,
yeah,
hydrated,
yeah,
not tired, not injured, not sore. So that means just managing my
yeah,
lifestyle, not drinking too much, and
yeah,
then not overtraining
yeah,
almost, and managing the intensities and the volume. And I feel
yeah.
it's lucky, and I put a post up the other day, and I thought I put a bike erg outside. It was a beautiful evening. I thought, what a privilege that I
Mm,
can spend an hour bike erging.
yeah,
I haven't had to rush to do it. I haven't had to tell anyone where I need to be, or
yeah.
to put anything off to do it. I've got an hour. I can bike erg for an
It's
hour.
an absolute privilege, but it's also a life that you built for yourself. So good on you for that. And um, so thankful to be able to have a chat with you at length. And I hope that everyone that's listening to this is going to benefit from it. And where could people find you? And could you tell us just a little bit more about your gym and where it's at, so anyone that's in the region can get there?
Yeah, so I'm most prominent on Instagram. I don't really use any other platform like TikTok or Facebook. So it's at Hall Strength. I'm sure you'll tag it.
Yep.
Um, and then, yeah, if you're ever on the Central Coast, which is an hour north of Sydney in New South Wales, I run a facility called LFG, stands for whatever
Let's
you want it to
fucking
stand
let's
for.
fucking go.
That's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Doesn't necessarily stand for that, but
Yeah. No.
it can be. Well, yeah, it
Yeah.
does.
Yeah. We don't. Yeah.
Um, and yeah, we're strength and conditioning small group training.
Yeah. Great.
High Rocks affiliate, Decker affiliate. Got a nice community, and I am available for some sessions, and I'm available for online coaching.
Okay. So if you are especially interested in how to go fast on the SkiErg, which I know some of you will be, this is your man. And if you're on the Central Coast and you're at all a fitness enthusiast, then that'll be a place to go. And I look forward to, I think it's about 7 hours away from me, and I'll
Yeah.
I'll get there at some
You're up in
stage.
Byron.
Up near there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't share specifically, but
Okay.
near,
Well, I
near
might give
enough, near
you
enough to Byron. They're about 15 minutes away.
oh, I know
Yeah,
worries.
yeah, yeah.
I go to Byron maybe once a year, so I'll give
Okay,
you
cool.
we can
Yeah,
maybe
next
have
time
a erg session up that
you're in
way.
town, mate. I don't. All I've got at the moment is a bike erg, and I've never bought a rower in my life.
Oh, really?
No, no, like
Yeah.
never needed to. But my wife she is seems like she's got the itch to go sub 7
Oh,
because
wow.
I've said she can, because I reckon she can.
Yeah.
So that might be the reason to get a rowing machine. We'll see.
Yeah, I got my wife to go sub 8, and she went uh 7:49. So
Yeah. I said to my wife that and we'll be married 7 years on Friday, that I I said, and I was only joking, half joking. I said I didn't ever think I'd marry someone that hadn't gone under 8 for 2K. And she just interpreted that as a challenge. She trained for 4 weeks and then went 7:54 and then trained for another 4 weeks and went 7:40. That's why I think she can go sub 7. It's just
it's quite a
yeah,
jump though.
yeah. But
Yeah, that's
you know,
it's
you
a good
put it
challenge.
in. It's all goes in the algorithm of what's possible based on what you know and what you think can be done
Yeah.
and all of those things. So we'll see. James, thanks very much for the chat, mate, and all the best for your endeavors. I'm sure we're going to talk more about it.